and paste and delete the one who's
Yeah.
there. So it's
I
not
just don't have it.
burdensome.
Otherwise I kept putting attendees in these.
And is there a formal process for posting the agenda, or is it just like among us that we share it?
So I think it's just among us for sharing it. I think it's helpful because it keeps it more informal. So if there's something that you guys want to add the day of, you guys can all choose to add it, as opposed to like
I think too.
as like a board meeting where it has to be posted 72 hours in advance. I think the purpose of this committee is supposed to be more of a working committee.
Yeah.
So there's no defined rules unless you guys decide what you want them to be.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe we'll target getting our agenda out like a couple days in advance, and then if there's any changes or additions, we'll just email all, reply all, and then the agenda will be reflected in our meeting notes.
So not posting the agenda ahead of time.
Oh, do we need to?
No.
Okay.
No,
yeah,
I think
not
we'll
posting.
just it'll end up being in the notes here, right?
Yes.
So we've got, we're gonna get started, right? We're missing a few folks or people. I think Vic mentioned he was gonna be online.
Just
Yeah.
to give you an idea, we have a spot in the website
Oh, cool.
and
Oh, great.
Sorry, I'm pulling up the agenda.
but anyways, like when
Yeah,
I
grab those.
You know
That's
what? I
awesome.
have them printed on
Oh,
my
you do?
printer. I
Wow.
just didn't bring them. Do you want me to go grab them?
That'd be helpful for me.
Okay.
Or
I
I
can
can
even
go
check
Oh, yeah.
the business office printer.
okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nadia.
Do you want to use my laptop for now so you can see all of them?
I have it here, but are we waiting for, or who are we missing?
Vivek can't make it today, but he's going to be listening in
Okay.
because he's not feeling well.
Yeah,
I think that's it, right?
Yeah.
that's it. Okay. All right. Okay, so I guess I'll kick it off then. So on agenda, we have 4 topics. So Doug and I met offline and we talked about a proposed meeting schedule for the rest of the academic year. So we wanted to review that with you guys. On the meeting schedule, we have the basic cadence is that we're following the budget review cycle that Nadia and Rebecca are doing. And so we're basically setting up our meeting so that we can review the proposed budget materials, interim reviews before it's presented to the board, and then discussing it afterwards to provide feedback back to the team.
And I forget, were those bi or quarterly meetings?
I think there's two per year.
So you always set up before that so that we're
Mhm.
preparing.
Yeah, and then that also gives us a chance, and I think there's opportunity also to take on special topics where we can do a deep dive investigation and then provide a recommendation to, to Rebecca and Nadia, who can share with the superintendent and do as needed.
Really quickly, just so I want to make sure I get details here. What are the 2 dates of the biannual reviews, the interdistrict? I forget what you all call
Oh,
it.
interims.
Interim.
Interim, okay. What are those dates?
So right now, for us meeting, it's set for the review of second interim is March 6th.
Okay. And then when does interim 1 come back?
First interim has already happened. So today is kind of a post-mortem of first interim.
Would we then be into the end of next year to look at interim 1? Should I
Yes.
note that? Okay.
Next year would be first interim.
So are we going to address interim 1 now, or are we just going to keep moving forward as though we're preparing?
Yeah, so as a practice round for this committee, today we're also going to review the first interim
Okay.
budget. So this will be kind of a retroactive review, whereas hopefully next time we can review it before it's finalized.
So when is the interim? I'm sorry, I'm just trying to make really good notes here. They're clear. Interim 1 for 2025 would be,
Financials up to October 30.
okay.
Thank you. So like I was saying, in addition to the reviewing the interim budgets, we also have capacity or time to deliver recommendations on special topics. We started generating a list of potential topics, so agenda item number 2 for today's meeting is to agree on what those special topics are for 2024, 2025. And then we'll do the review of the first interim, and then finally there's a request to review the travel policy, so we'll talk about that as well.
Cool, so are we talking now about the topics we want to
So
focus on?
So I guess like first, let's review the proposed meeting schedule. We should probably set the meeting for January today. And then if everybody else is okay with the proposed dates for the next ones, we'll set this calendar going forward. But so on this sheet, we have December 11th, which is today. We'll review the first interim budget retroactively, so to speak. January TBD, which should decide today, will deliver recommendations on special topic number 1. The suggestion is to take on, there's a lot of buzz right now on credit card policy, so that's the suggested topic, but we can discuss that. March 6th, we would review the draft second interim budget, and then after the board and then in May 14th, we would review the draft 2025-2026 budget.
So January is what date? Do we want to address that now?
Yes, we can address that now.
There's the 8th, 15th, 22nd, 29th. Does this day and time still work for everybody?
In general,
Works for
So
the people who are here, yes.
15th, 22nd? seems-
22nd won't work because we have a personal tax oversight committee.
Okay. What about the 15th or the 8th? 8th is kind of close to
Yeah, if
People
you
getting-
close.
recalibrating for regular life, civilian life.
Okay, let's do the 15th.
Cool.
Still 4:15, 5:15?
So what I would like to have I hate to do this, but I want to talk about topics at a higher level, at a more general level. Because I think we've had a number of discussions about this, but I don't feel like this needs to be one-dimensional on finance. I think that we can go back to kind of what we agreed on in terms of kind of goals.
Mhm.
And so I'm remembering we agreed that we're reporting here to the superintendent, super interactive with everybody all the way down to the community. And I would like to talk about Vic's feedback a little bit today, if that's an appropriate forum. And then we're working with the board to help bring information that some of them want, but also we're interacting with them. I guess the point is that I don't think that we decided that we're just going to deal with financial stuff. So I want to make it really clear up front. I want to deal with a more broad, general, addressing not only the kind of things that Vic is bringing to us, but just overall what we talked about a few meetings, which was the process of communication, bringing all the information and the knowledge to a same kind of level. So I don't know if that's a good time now, but I feel like we're getting into setting agenda here that's really, I would call single dimensioned on financial stuff. And I don't think that's not gonna be the only thing that I would like to see this committee be able to support. So I don't know, if you want me to go into a little bit of the other things, but we've talked about the other things and
Can you say a bit more on what are some of the other things beyond financials that you would like to address?
so I think that we've talked a lot about the fact that there's a lack of information sharing and throughput. And
Oh, sorry.
yeah,
I'll
go
let
ahead.
you, please, I was
And
finished.
so I'd really like to figure out at some level initially, what are the major pain points with our audience? Now, maybe that's stuff we can do away from the meeting, hopefully it is, but it would probably be nice for us to have a conversation with the superintendent, even interim superintendent, Dr. Skelly. And that may be something that you two can do. It may be something that we can do separately from here. But he did give us a good idea of what he thought this group would be doing, would be helpful. But I'm actually interested in some interviewing of folks because Vic has brought some statements and some information to us today that, while at face value seems kind of extreme, I want to make sure that that's information that is kind of being validated. I don't need names. We don't need to kind of know who's saying this, but that's a pretty extreme statement, what he's saying. I don't agree with that statement as a parent. So I want to understand why I should be listening to that and understanding that there's a consensus, a majority of the district, parents, community that don't trust the district. I disagree with that wholeheartedly, but I want to make sure I'm not missing stuff. So that's one kind of example. I can stop there. We can talk about that, or I can give a couple other examples.
Can I maybe ask the question, what is the expectation for how much depth a person should know about the details of the school going on in terms of finances? Because I think if you're getting down to every parent should know backwards and forwards, like that's a whole different piece of like in general, like how does a budget? Because like in my head, I'm thinking like what Rebecca has been producing for the last few years seems like a general sense of what parents would want to know, where money comes from, where it goes in general. But then there's another sense of people who want to know like specific details about every component. And that feels more like a specific group of people who want to know that and not like a general. And so I guess like what is the scope of how much people, what would the typical average person need to know would help me understand too. Because there's a sense of like, you can't be transparent about, well, you can be transparent, but the level of transparency needed for some people is not necessarily reasonable for the average person. And so I want to make sure that we are addressing what an average person would need to be satisfied versus what a specific group of people want. And it's burdensome on a district's ecosystem because there's a level of like some things is like going through my specific credit card use is like, sure you can do it, but like, is that the good use of your time? Like my budget for my school is $20K and I can't put that much on a credit card.
Yeah, and I think I'm gonna avoid answering your question right now, but more to address the previous question of like, you know, what can we go beyond finance? And I would say that the objective of this committee is really helping the superintendent make sure that the budget supports the strategic priorities. The strategic priorities are set by the board, so we're not changing any of those. We're just making sure that the budget supports the strategic priorities. And then as far as methodologies, it doesn't have to be financial analysis. That's not the only method we're allowed to use. We can do interviews, we can do whatever, like I wrote down auditing methods, we can do surveys, we can do whatever we want, right? Like method-wise. But objective-wise, I do think we're pretty tied to, you know, making sure the budget meets strategic priorities.
And I wanted to confirm your comment of beyond finances. Like, do you mean like recommending actions in terms? Yeah, is it a method thing or the subject matter? Because we are like a budget advisory committee, so I think the core of all we do is related to finances. But to Patty's point, it doesn't have to be just all financial analysis.
Yeah, you know, I'm just reading back here the kind of previous things that we talked about and embedded.
One of those topics from last time was ideas like are the benefits district employees getting appropriate, right? And there's some overlap like on that topic with finance, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. That's where we cross over. We've got a budget that could use help from this group, I believe. Back to Vern's comment, there's a lot of information that's not being shared about budget being the hub and everything that comes out of that. All the activities, the audience. When I heard Vern saying what he was saying, I heard also a need to maybe go and do some interviewing. Like in January, it'd be great to I think it would be good to do some interaction and then do some action. So I don't know enough from the board, all the board, even teachers, staff, the community, parents, to know what the kind of hot topics, the pain points are. I get the news is the news, and there's a superintendent that's over here, we want a trip, some hot cigars, et cetera, et cetera. There's a very small budget each school, but I want to make sure that we're starting with a kind of balanced, inclusive, everything's in parity in terms of perspective. And right now it feels very off.
Well-
And so when Doug is saying what he just said, I feel like we need to interact a little bit more with our audience to get to know things we don't know. Otherwise, I just feel like uninformed and not I don't know enough.
So I also have the perspective that we are a new committee and there's a lot of things we want to do, but I think in our inaugural year, we should limit ourselves to doing a few things well. And so that's why my recommendation is that we start with, let's pick 2. If we think we have capacity for 4, let's do, let's make that commitment. But let's choose an achievable number of special topics. And which topics are most important? Let's ask the person that we're accountable to, which is the superintendent. And so if the superintendent is hearing a lot of complaints about X, Y, and Z, and those are the questions that he wants us to approach first, then let's do it. And then through these first couple of projects, we'll learn more and gain more perspective. We'll be through our methodology of talking to different people, we'll eventually be able to develop our own opinion. But I think for now, in the first couple of steps, I would say, pragmatically speaking, in order to do something by January, I would start with.
We can do
An
that.
existing
That would be a good
topic.
test. I've got a hypothesis here that we're going to look at that and realize there's nothing wrong with that oversight. I really don't think that it's going to take more than an hour or two for you to look at that and go, it's policy. Where I think we have a problem is the community not believing that that policy is being enforced and the transparency of how that policy needs to be better enforced. So I'm open to this, but this is where I think we talked a lot about, this committee can do whatever we want. So I don't want to pigeonhole us into financial topics only. I want to make that really clear up front. If that's what we're going to do, okay, but that's not really what I'm good at doing, nor do I believe that's what we need to do to replace the people that are good at already doing that. So I really want to be very, very clear here. I don't want to make an assumption that the people that are doing this now aren't doing a good job. If you want to do an audit and this group can help in that, let's do that. But let's not waste a lot of time doing that. That should be a fairly straightforward thing, right? The books are open. So I really want to come back to Vic's email because I think that in the first quarter of our meeting, 3 months from now, we should be able to say, we've gained an understanding here. Yes, there's a good portion of the district that has an issue with the way that their budgets are being spent on mentoring for teachers, this issue of meditation or coaching, etc. But I don't want to start just throwing out topics like credit card policy and stuff like that as our focus. I don't think that's a good use of our time. I just don't. So I'm sorry to be the contrarian here, but I really want to continue thinking about how this group can help form a wider trust bridge between the parents, the customer, the taxpayers, and the district, the staff, and the teams here.
I guess I'm confused as to building, as far as I understand, the lack of trust is specifically around finances. So when you want to say you want to broaden our scope to be beyond finance, what are there some examples?
Yeah. At 30,000 feet looking down, I think this group has been tasked with, and the district needs help with bridging the distrust that Vic has brought to us in email today.
Yes, but isn't the distrust fundamentally around the financials and
Yes, but it's not, I don't believe, I could be wrong. In this case, I hope I'm not. I don't believe I am. I don't think it's being done wrong. I think the information isn't being shared in a way that it's clear and understandable to folks who want to know. I also think that the loud voices complaining that aren't trusting need better information, and they need to know where that is, and they need to be kind of led to that information.
So I wonder if part of bridging the trust is identifying that, hey, we reviewed the credit card policy and the policies that currently exist. These are actually the best policies that we
Yeah.
recommend. So in terms of the district doing this correct, this is correct. So the next step is presenting to those people. And like, you won't get the people on the far outskirts because they've been gone, but you will get the people who were like, oh, so there is a policy, an outside body has reviewed it and it works. So this is their recommendation. So I'm wondering if we start with, we reviewed it, this is a policy, that's the communication tool, and talking about why this is the best way to do that would help to.
I think that, but alongside that, I would like feedback at some point without making that the first step from the audience. Like this is great. Let's focus on the credit card policy. That sounds great. But under that, the subtopic for me would be, what does the superintendent think about it currently? What does the board think about it currently? And what does the community think about it at large? And anonymize it, right? I have a feeling some of those people are going to go, I have no idea what it is. So the first thing is, let's make it really apparent what it is and where you can find it, if you want to find it. But I think what you're saying is right. So I think this is a great test bed of topics that we can go over, but not because we're going to come in and make it better. Because we're going to probably
Yes.
aggregate more information.
I think we're saying the same
Thing,
thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
cool.
Yeah, that's what I understood what
Yeah.
we're doing from the credit card policy piece.
Yeah.
So I think.
Yeah, and I think I think your concern may be just more disseminating that information to.
Yeah.
And
to a
getting more
certain extent.
information and getting
Yeah.
some feedback.
We're having a
before.
deliberate plan as to why we're doing that, right? And the reason that we're doing this is because there's a question amongst the different groups
Yes.
of whether it's
Agreed.
credible
Yeah,
or not,
Yeah, I
right?
feel like we're saying. I guess my point, the point that, or the piece that I got hung up on was like the non-financial piece.
Yeah,
but
that's
but
not a
maybe-
great description.
Yeah. But I
Um,
think we're saying the same.
So I guess one question I have for you, based on this discussion, is do we deliver our recommendation in a different format than, or what is the format of delivery for our recommendations? I was thinking, yeah, go ahead.
Also, how do we solicit that feedback?
Yeah.
Do we bring it back to this venue and work with it? And then what's our deliverable in the end?
Because that could also be a very long project.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I, like a question for the group?
Yeah.
What might be helpful as, you know, the district is going through this process is like, if we talk about travel, for example. So we are going to be making some adjustments to the travel policy just to make sure that it is more transparent. So we do have travel policies in place, but I think, you know, to your point, what is missing is how do people see it? Because all of our policies are on the intranet, which means you have to be an internal employee in order to view them. So like if I come to this group and say, here's our travel policy, here are the adjustments that we're making, and then it's something that's posted on the website, and then this group looks at it and says, yes, I think this is a good policy, or we would suggest changing this piece because we have a CPA, we have some people from private industry to also look over it, because it's kind of, I think, and then getting that feedback and then adjusting our overall policy, because I think it's a little bit of everything, that we've got some things that are good in place, but there's definitely room for improvement. And maybe this group, as we tackle each piece, so like, let's say in the January meeting, I might actually make a request that we switch topics, because for credit cards, we've taken all the credit cards back. No one person has a credit card anymore, which is great for the business office. Like, we are very happy about that. Sorry, Vern.
It sounds really painful from an operating perspective.
But that piece, like
And was that a result of the public response?
no, it was, I think initially Nadia and I are not a fan of credit cards, just because of the oversight, and Doug as a CPA probably understands. But there had been a previous request or directive to put out credit cards. So under Kevin Skelly, we took them all back. We have 2 purchasing credit cards that live on the purchasing desk. So, because there's some things that you just can't buy without a credit card. So if a credit card is needed, someone can check it out, or they can say, I need this for this subscription, and the business office purchases it. You're right, operationally it slows things down a little bit, but I think that topic, if I could request, we switch the order and we put travel policies for January, and then I could bring something for this group to look at, and then I'll probably bring it to the Board of Trustees for review of kind of like a step to make it transparent. And instead of having it on the intranet for internal employees only, we post it publicly. And then for the other interims, some of it's a communication piece, because like Vern was saying, what we produce right now has been for the general public to try to understand, but we're getting more questions now. Like they're asking to see the variance between adoption and first interim. And for like, it is, the information is there, it's in the packet, but we had a question from one member of the public, well, I want to see it in the presentation. It's hard for us to know, does the general public want that, or does one person want it? And then we point them to the backup documents that were provided. That's what would be helpful for this group, for the interims, of like, oh, I'm curious about this, the general public would like it. And then from Doug's point, as from a CPA, oh, it's in the backup documents, don't put that in the PowerPoint because it's going to confuse people, that type of thing.
So for the delivery of our first special topic recommendation, it sounds like you're saying it's the recommendation is basically done live during this meeting. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I was thinking. I think because this is a kind of a representative group of the community, I think we have lots of other processes, like for the LCAP, where we're like setting direction for the district, that those have iterative processes. But I think if this committee wanted to oversee, like look at the travel policy to provide, like at the end of the meeting, either we endorse this or we don't endorse it yet. And then I can then take that to the board.
Okay. I think that at least for myself, a lot of times there's materials that are presented, but I don't know enough to make a decision on the spot. And so I also think that for a lot of finance related or budget related decisions, there's some background analysis that needs to be done, or background learning that needs to be done. So one thing that could speed this up. So two suggestions. One is if you could send the material in advance so we can review it and then we can discuss in here, that I think that would be more efficient. The other suggestion is that I think this committee has potential to do more than just review work that you've already put together. So think about ways that you might further leverage the volunteer hours that you have at your disposal.
How about, do you want to create I can give you I think I've shared our travel policy. If you guys want to, Foothill De Anza, I think also had a really good one that we were going to try to copy.
Yeah, well, can we agree that, can we do credit card policy? So are we not meeting in February? Did we decide that was a month we're not going to meet?
Right.
Okay. So can we do travel policy now and credit card next time? Or
Yeah, you guys want to come up with it?
Could credit card fit within travel policy or no? Is that?
Let's
It's
do
a
that
different-
separate. It's
Okay.
totally.
So, yeah, is that okay if we do travel
Yeah.
policy?
I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like, it feels like we can do more than just one thing every 30 days, right? So we can kind of have other topics going, but this would be a main one.
But I think
Yeah.
to Patty's point, doing something well is important to establish, like, hey, we can do this, and like it's received. I would hate to do like 3 or 4 things and then the public still feels like you're not being trustworthy, or like it feels like a lot of work to do and then not have it be what you want. And so I think having something like travel policy, which is
It's a hot topic.
it's a topic, we can get it done,
It's in the
see if
news.
it works, and then move to something different, and then maybe add 3 or 4 topics at that point if it's.
Yeah, that sounds
Yeah.
good. Okay.
But
So,
Good.
how do you want to frame this so that we can get the work done that we need to do? We've got access to the information. one of the way that I think is easy to capture information is doing what Vic is doing, talking to people. We could schedule some time if the board was interested, or we could just do surveys. Surveys are super easy. I don't know what the district's policy is on that, but just doing a BAC survey that's a Google survey that has an input to a sheet that we have access to. We want to anonymize it. That could be something that can be shared publicly. I don't know if that's a practice that's okay to do or not, but it's a super easy, quick way to get probably some input. Same with staff. I mean, for me, the travel policy is what it is. I don't know if it's good or bad. It doesn't seem like it's onerous or nefarious, and I don't.
But isn't that the project? The question is, how is our travel policy? Is it good or bad? What changes would you recommend?
I think also
Maybe it's a,
I don't know.
you keep getting smarter. Well, maybe it's not, I kind of hear where everyone's coming from, like,
Yeah.
I don't think our travel policies are horrendous. I think they're similar to kind of what we see elsewhere. But are there policies out there that are better?
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
So maybe it's we take our policy, which has worked well for many years, and we make it better.
Mhm.
And maybe it's the group that, like, we listen to what the community is saying. Right now, our policies are written that they report up to the superintendent, and the superintendent is making decisions on travel. And I think there is, what I'm hearing from the community is that there is more of a request that it's that there's something different in place, whether it's, posting, and I don't know what that looks like. So maybe it's those pieces that we hear from the community, either from what Vivek speaking with people, like what is it that would make the community feel good about the travel policies?
Okay, I hear what you're saying about interviews. Fern, did you have a comment?
I wonder, how do we make sure we get a sense of all voices and not just disgruntled or upset voices? Because I know with surveys, you get people who really care about a topic, positive or negative, and you don't get a general sense. And that could be good in that you get opinion, right, about it. But if you're getting the 10 people in the district who are responding on every survey the same way, it's skewed to one direction. And you're making a policy based on a few people, not based on what generally is good. So that's the one thing I wonder with the surveys, or like, how do we make sure that their surveys represent the community and not just a community?
That's a valid point. I actually think in an anonymous survey, you get more of the neutral and objective folks than you do of the subjective. You'll get all the subjective. We'll get everybody that's yelling that they don't trust, they're going to come in and do their thing. We're going to see that. The issue for me is if we come back to what does success look like for this one task and delivering success, to me, it's not going to be successful unless we do exactly what you said. Everybody has had a chance to make their opinion a part of the influence, a part of the process. It's not going to be perfect, but if we were to do something like a survey, I would be out there really promoting the heck out of it. Not only in my personal network, but wherever I can on Nextdoor or elsewhere. And that's just how I would deal with it. I'm not saying that we have to do it that way, but I just feel like there's no way to capture information and opinions we don't have now without doing something that at least is, again, kind of equal and inclusive. I don't know what that is. I mean, it could just be that we could talk to our people, our friends. I don't know.
Yeah, my one comment, I mean, I like the idea of a survey just to get some sort of pulse, and we'll have to be cognizant of like the response rates if they're very low. But I guess I'm not sure if you were suggesting a survey specific to the travel policy, because I think if we look at like the travel spend as a percentage of the total budget, like we should be cognizant of like where our resources are spent and like garnering opinions, like doing research on like exhaustive other companies' travel policies, and
so the survey process that I would propose is simpler and less is more. So we don't have to get too deep into this, but it's literally, if we decide what our topics are this year that we're going to address, then we would put that in the survey and say, of these, which one would you prioritize as number 1, 2, 3?
I wasn't sure if you were
We'd
saying
have a
we should
little
have a
paragraph
travels.
if you want to write something to us, but we just try to keep it like 5 or 6 questions, boom, 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 and then we get that, because then we know generally, hey, we had 8 out of 100 that want us to focus on travel policy. That opens up the gate then for these people to want more. And, you know, we print the minutes, and I don't know, we don't have to get too deep into this right now, but I feel like if we were to create a goal here for next month with the travel policy, I like the comparison exercise. That feels super legit.
Yeah, I'm gonna move us into process and like next steps, but
Mhm.
Fern, did you have a comment before we move?
Well, I just wanted to say, would it be beneficial to actually write down how much of the budget is spent on travel as part of soliciting input from people? Because I think there's I get the sense that people think we're like expending a lot on travel and things like that. And I just don't know that, from my experience, that's true. That our budget is spent on travel, and so I kind of, as we're putting this information out and discussing it, 0.4% of our budget goes to travel each year. What is the travel policy, right? Like it's just this. I just think about the travel I did last year and the travel that principals did last year. It was very little, right?
Yeah, we definitely should have a background information section where we start with like grounding facts and scoping the problem. So with an eye on time, I know we started a little late, so I think we have about 15-20 minutes left. We have 2 more topics to do. So what I'd like to do is propose that I think we've agreed on the topic for January. We'll tackle travel policy. We haven't really addressed what the deliverable format is. I'd like to address that. And then I propose also that we have us kind of take it offline, take it at a subcommittee level to figure out like what's, I think we have the scope of the problem defined here. It'll show up in our meeting minutes. And then the subcommittee will determine what the best methodology is, and then ask for help if you need on executing the method.
Is this specific to the travel policy or just in general for all of our special topics?
Specific for travel policy, but I think in general, I think it's good for us to kind of agree on what the scope is, and then if there are any questions that the subcommittee is working on that need discussion, bring it up during the meeting, but we don't need to deep dive on the topic. We don't need to deep dive on the special topic during this meeting.
So you want to figure out what we want to deliver from the travel policy?
Yeah, go ahead. Do you have a thought?
Oh, I was just going to say maybe see the current version, pick out a couple good example ones, and maybe just bullets on, I don't know what the current policy should focus on. I don't know.
Yeah. So I guess simplistically, I think, is this a report in Word that we email to Dr. Skelly, or is this a verbal presentation with PowerPoint slides that we deliver to Rebecca and Nadia? Like, what's the deliverable format?
What's the best suggestion for the audience, for the superintendent of board? Is Word good or slides better? What do you
We do
think?
both.
Both.
So I think it's whatever's easier for the community. Because I'd like whatever the group comes up with, it would be nice, not just verbal, so we can post it online for people that can't listen in.
So it feels like a Word doc would be more compatible for posting online.
And I think we
Slides are
just
kinda
literally highlight the sections that we're proposing to update.
Yeah.
And say-
Or
and
good.
then like
Sure.
the underlying issue that we're addressing through the change. And maybe there are issues already addressed in the existing policy. I did want to ask though, who, there's the policy side, but there's also an enforcement side, like who actually reviews and approves these reimbursement requests?
So right now, it's the business office which enforces it. But we need the policies in order to be able to enforce it. So as they're written now, the superintendent is the head. So
He reviews and approves everyone else's.
no, the way the policies are written is they all it defers to the superintendent. So for example, for travel policy, the travel is determined by the superintendent. And then the business office enforces what the superintendent sets.
Yeah, I feel at least what I read from the public's statement, it was a lot of like no oversight on the superintendent. I don't know if there's.
So the oversight of the superintendent comes from the board.
But like, is the board tactically reviewing? his
You're the movie spoiler on Facebook.
Sorry.
That's the climax. That's where we have to get to in all of
Got
this.
it. All right.
We have to find the Holy Grail, right? I mean, that is the point, right? The point of what I think you're saying is really what we need to get to, the bottom up, and then say, aha, we found it. There's something or there's nothing. And here's our recommendation.
So
Yeah, I think that's important.
so is that the topic? That's the actual meat of the topic for next meeting. Is that what we're saying, or is that for today?
It feels like you just kind of hit the
Yeah.
climax of the story
Oh.
there. I don't know. I mean, that's a really, I don't know what you all feel on the district side, but from the parent community side, I read the news and that's all we get. The news isn't news anymore. So we need to get to the bottom of this and just make sure
So
that.
it seems like from your question, January is when we would address that topic.
I don't know. Are we doing it
That's what I
today or
heard.
January?
I heard, based on the special topic being January, is the travel policy. I would assume
Got
not.
it. Okay. So we should save this conversation.
Well, are we gonna spend the next 30 days, because we
Yes.
agreed we're gonna work
Yeah.
away from meetings to do
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
homework.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you all, the teachers and the students, you can do both.
Yeah.
But it feels like we've established this process now. We're gonna look at and identify what we wanna do. We'll deliver a recommendation here on the 15th of
We'll
January.
turn in our homework on January
I see.
15th.
So
Maybe-
offline, you'll send us the actual policy, and then
We have it.
Yes, you have it.
oh, we
Yeah.
have oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then sorry, was that email from you?
Yes,
Okay.
but I can send it again. It's okay.
And then asynchronously, we'll kind of come up with our own.
Come
I
back,
wondered
yeah.
before the January 15th, just so it's more productive, like if the group comes up with something, maybe let us proof it first, because there's some things like internal workings, like if,
Yeah.
like we don't want to put a policy in place that we can't actually, like, we can't make it work. But-
Right, that's a good point. So I wasn't thinking we'd come and say, please do this. This is kind of the
Like
first
indirect.
pass.
Got it.
But I don't know, that's process. So is that
Yeah.
what your expectation was? That we'd show up and say, hey, we've got our first pass of idea, we'd like to present it to you in an organized way.
So the way I'm framing this is, the question or the prompt is, how does Mountain View Wisman School District travel policy compare to other school district policies? What recommendations would you recommend? And we could say, we recommend no changes, but there needs to be like, we recommend X, Y, and Z for these reasons. And that goes into a a Word doc. Okay.
I think that's right.
So we independently do that to.
I think we're independently reviewing the policies that exist and the current policy
Yeah.
offline, and all the back down research. When we come together, we're deciding and discussing like the pros and cons of like each policy, and if we independently thought of something that wasn't there, we would share that ahead of time so that Rebecca can say that. But when we come together, we're kind
It's
of
already filtered out.
we're filtering out all the stuff.
Yeah, other thing is we should probably meet offline and set up, and probably the active members on the committee should meet offline and say like, this is what we're gonna do. 1, we're gonna review the policies. 2, we're gonna interview 5 people. 3, we're gonna whatever,
Yeah,
right? And then we need to assign who's doing what,
Yeah.
and then who's actually like,
Yeah, I'm confused
Yeah.
on like exactly.
yeah. So we need to, but we don't have to do that in person.
Sure.
Is I'm just making an assumption. It's okay if for this group, for organization purposes, we have a drive. I can make a Google Drive and we can put stuff there so it's easier to find. That's okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that'd be great.
So I definitely agree with you. If we can do a way of working through 30 days, where we meet every 30 days, but kind of minimize the every day that we have to do, but work in between,
Yeah.
that would be good.
Does anybody want to lead this special topic subcommittee, this project?
I'll do it.
Okay. Get us organized.
We need it.
Okay, good. All right, so we've finished our agree on special topics for 24-25. So basically, we've decided what to deliver on January 15th. And we haven't decided for special topic 2, but I think that I suspect we'll learn a lot from doing this first one. And maybe one of the feedback that we get when we deliver this first special topic is what other topics the public wants to hear about. Let's punt that. Let's punt this decision for the special topic number 2 for January 15th.
We'll hit up also, the following meeting is 2 months later, and that hits the interim budget review, right?
Yeah,
So I think you're right. For the
we'll need to
travel-
do some work for that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it may be that we don't do another special topic until after the second interim review.
Yeah, the
Right.
proposal was June 11th would be deliver recommendations on special topic 2.
Oh, okay, cool.
It's just to space out our work.
Okay, cool.
Patty, I'm sorry, I was looking at the dates. March 6th is a Thursday, and we have a board meeting that night. So I wonder if you can say March 5th instead.
Sure.
That we just parking the credit card one until we figure out where to put it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a proposal for special topic number 2.
Let's see.
If I can make a suggestion for the special topic number 2, I think we're being a bit reactive, which makes sense for these like hot topics, but I wonder if there's appetite to kind of lay the foundations, if you will, and kind of have a readout. I'm just kind of spitballing a little bit, but have a readout, like catered readout, maybe one that's targeted just for the general public, and one that's a little bit more in depth for these high interest group of people. And I think it will tackle both like this group's, having a good fundamental understanding of the overall like finances of the district, as well as hopefully satisfying a little bit of this desire for more information.
I like the way that sounds. Can we just put it in an actionable thing? What is it? What does that look like for you?
For me, I would think of ultimately two deliverables. One is either a live presentation, or maybe one is targeted for like the general public with maybe a little bit more context, or just like in layman's terms, what does the budget mean? Because if someone just looks at it, there's a bunch of acronyms. People don't have either finance background and education background, and really don't understand what we're seeing. And then another one that's a little bit more in depth, and it has like hits on the hot topics that we know the community is talking about. And perhaps that one's live, and we invite interested members to say, if you're more interested about learning about the budget, like we have this live meeting, we plan to do like a 30-minute just like high level walkthrough, and like give us your questions.
Would that be better between January and March, or is that, because I hear you saying that may be a good kind of tone setter?
Yeah, I mean, I'm ambivalent to the timing, but just in terms of like special topic number 2, I just feel like it would check the box, if you will, on a couple of things like community outreach, more information to those that might want it, kind of laying the groundwork of the fundamentals of like the budget. Where our special topic number 1 is on travel policy, which yes is important from a policy perspective, but from a dollars perspective, we're talking about less than 1% or whatever it might be. So just giving some overall context.
And that would be topic 2.
That would be one suggestion, and then maybe we get more from the public, and we obviously get more.
Interesting. And if that were to happen in June, we'd probably lose people because they're heading out for summer. So we have lots to think about. But I love that idea. I think that's
I
really,
like that. If it's okay, let's think about that. Maybe we add a meeting somewhere between January and March, or March and May, so that it's not all the way back out in June. Yeah.
What about the March one? I'm just curious, like I get the sense that the public is not super interested in first interim or second interim. They're more interested in understanding the budget. I mean, the interims are just an update on how things have moved.
What if
And
that
it's
was
kind
the
of
content
actualizing.
for that format?
Yeah, but we can use that as a
Oh,
basis, like,
Like that.
here's the latest budget for the 24
Kind of a- Hey, you don't know what interim is? Well, we're going to tell you that and more. Does that seem reasonable?
Yeah. especially if you want to get involved in
Yeah.
24, 25, 26 budget. Yeah, I like
That's
that.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the, I like what you're saying because we really need to let people know you have a voice. You have
It's almost like they don't
influence.
have an outlet, so then they post something elsewhere and
Yeah.
like
Like on Facebook and Instagram.
and there's a little bit of I don't want to say potential misinformation. Like, for example, I think one of the responses from the former superintendent was like, "Hey, I paid this. This was one line item on my credit card bill, but it was for 20 people," which makes total sense. But if you take that out of context, if you just see one line item thinking this is just the superintendent's credit card, like that can breed a little bit of misunderstanding. So that's why having a live walkthrough, having a forum for people to ask questions and get like a factual response.
So maybe you should share something with the group just because it's positive. I think everyone's highlighted something like the travel is under 1% of our budget. I think holistically, I think what's something that's a disservice to the district. Holistically, the budget, like we have another 2 clean audits, one for Measure T and one for the district's overall budget. So what the clean audit means is like we are following standard practices. They do audit the superintendent's credit cards, meaning that every item has to be attached to a work expense. When they look at those items, are they looking for, they're seeing that it's attached to an actual work expense. And I think, to your point about like a dinner that was for 20 people or, more than one person, they're looking at the receipts for that. And then, the district is also rated AAA plus for all of our bonds. So I think but holistically, the budget is in really good shape. Like we're not needing to cut employees. So those pieces are there, but I think the trust needs to be built again because of some pieces where people have not had the information that would make them feel
Okay, so we're scheduled to end in 2 or 3 minutes. How do you guys feel about going over a little bit by 5-10 minutes, and then we can at least review the first interim budget, take a look at it?
Sure.
Sorry, Rebecca and Nadia, I'm looking at you guys.
I do have to pick up my kids, but
Okay.
at 6. I mean, I have to leave 5:45. So after that, I have to pay late
Oh,
fee
no.
for.
Okay.
And
Oh, they have a fantasy dance too? That's where I gotta go. They
like a
charge a
minute
lot.
late. So I do have time to stay a little late.
We're just
Okay.
talking 15 minutes.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay,
15 max. Let's target 10.
Yes.
So this was already read out to the board.
So do you want us to present first interim to the group as if we were like we did to the board?
Yeah,
Maybe like reducing it down to
Project to me.
5 minutes.
yeah, sorry to.
And for context, are there typically any feedback? My understanding that the interims are just kind of an actualization of the fiscal year to date, and then any updates to the forecast. So it's basically an updated forecast. Is there typically any feedback or changes that happen as a result of the readout?
We get questions from the trustees ahead of time.
So there are questions that we can answer, but in terms of like changing it, no. There can be changes if, let's say, special ed we decide to add 2 new teachers, like in the board's requests at the interim saying, hey, we would like to add 2 new teachers, but you're going to see those changes made at second interim. Again, first interim is just taking a snapshot of where we're at.
And have you guys done a analysis of your historical variance off of first interim?
Between
basically-
budget adoption and first interim,
Yeah,
always.
how has it been pretty steady? Is there any trending?
It really depends on the year. So depending on the year, changes in how many teachers we hire. I mean, about 80% of our budget is personnel.
Mhm.
So if we haven't been able to hire, it'll show up as a cost savings because we're continuing to try to hire. This year, we saw an increase of about $1 million for special ed personnel because we needed more instructional assistance. So it's really based on what's happening in the classrooms, typically, of what swings our budget. We don't see large changes for things like MOT. Other drivers recently have actually been PG&E, so we've had to change. Like normally, in the past we've increased it by a standard percent, but PG&E has increased so much over the last few years that we're, I'm sure, like everyone else's power bill.
Yes. And another change that was big this year for first interim versus budget adoption is that we had approved the CSEA or classified and management salary increase like in the last meeting of the budget, like in the last meeting of the year. So we assigned the fund balance the amount, but it wasn't like in the expenditures line by line. While we were accounting for the potential expenditure, it was not line by line. So at first interim, like we were able to capture all those changes with all the new salaries, all the benefits. So that at first interim, we want to be able to capture what like we have these vacancies, so we should expect to see changes from budget adoption to first interim to like throughout, like we have this many vacancies, because we're projecting with the enrollment as well.
So I maybe to translate a little bit of what Nadia said, when she said we approved the raise. So we have a budget preview and then budget adoption. So 2 separate meetings for the trustees. In between kind of the review and then the adoption, in the middle, we approved salary negotiations with CSEA, which is a lot of our budget. We didn't have time to go back in. So in the SACS form that Nadia creates each time, it'll show line by line, like this is what's going towards classified and certified. In order for Nadia to go back in, she would have to open up the books completely, rebalance things, which is impossible to do in that short time frame. So she put it in as a line item at the bottom because we have a program called Analytic, because salaries and benefits are very complicated. This is not something you do in a spreadsheet. It's a software program where it takes each employee and says, oh, they have 3 dependents. This is what their health benefits are going to be, dental, all of that. So she inputs it, and it provides a number of what the salary increase is going to cost, because we also have to worry about retirement benefits for PERS and STIRS. And so she took that amount and put it as a line item. So at first interim, we took that chunk of money that we knew it was costing and actually put it in the lines. Do you want to run through
Not
that?
for today, but that right there is a good example of that would never be deciphered out to the community so they
Yeah.
understand that. So that's just in my mind, I'm like, oh, interesting, but that makes sense. Just hard to translate in 5 words or less for somebody who needs to know that or wants to know that. That's interesting.
I feel like that's why Nadia and I make a good team. she translates for me and then I translate out.
For me, it sounded okay. Yeah. Okay, so this is our presentation, and maybe we can move a little bit quickly to skip some of the like strategic.
Maybe just go to the highlight slide.
So here we'd like to include this graph because it gives like a big picture of like what is our timeline, like in we're here in the fall, going to kind of like the process for budget adoption is almost already started for us, because what changes we capture now is going to impact our budget adoption. Information actuals included in the SACS file. All the actual transactions are included up to October 31st. We talked a little bit about the rollover of like the funds that were not fully spent, that we carry over in the current year. That's typically applicable for like restricted funds. We call them categorical, but it's restricted funds, can be federal, state, or other like local expenditures. Again, Rebecca, you wanted to show?
This is looking at AV role growth. So for secured, this is property taxes of what drives our budget. So we're very fortunate in Mountain View that we've had positive AV growth for multiple years in a row.
I'm sure, what was the acronym you used?
AV, assessed value.
Assess value. The current projection is 6% for us, or at first entry.
Oh, this is percent growth.
Yes.
So then we highlighted major changes since budget adoption, what's changed between adoption and first interim. I won't read through each one, but something that we focus on quite a bit is AV growth. We showed the chart previously. We're always conservative because if we overestimate, it's overestimating our revenue coming in. And then if you overestimate, then you have to make cuts. So that's what we don't want to do. So at budget adoption, we said 4% for AV growth, and AV growth will continue to adjust until about December because they're still processing corrections. So they have role corrections that will continue to change. So right now we're showing 6. And when we look back at the past years, and this is more just information for the group, we look at, so in June or July, the assessor's office will say, this is where we're landing. And then we keep watching. So even though they say this is the role for the year coming, which we're projecting, we will see it continue to change up or down. And it's changed up or down by about 2%, which is over $1 million. So that's why even in June, July, we are still conservative. We're not going to match that number yet because it can go down or it can go up by 2%. So you'll see that we said 4, now we're up to 6%, and we'll keep watching, and we'll still have adjustments for this year's role occurring this year.
I think one of the highlights is that, I think it was a big deal for us to prove the parcel tax because the multi-year projection, that would have been a big big hit. We also included the $10,000 for the library and $20,000 for buses and transportation for students for the sites. So that was a good amount. So here we go over like the unsecured property tax. Unsecured property tax, we are very conservative because for those really we can actually see a decrease, but we already received the money, so now we are able to increase it to 4.7 million. And then for 28, we will be developing the plan. I think we're developing the plan now, and will be sent for approval. But we recognize the revenue. We now have the revenue. We talk a little bit about special education. I think for special education, we start the year, we adopt the budget with vacancies because our intention is to hire qualified employees for those positions. But as the year starts, and then we need to hire contracted services to provide the services in the classroom if we don't have those positions filled on time.
We can hop to this is looking at STRS and PERS. I think something that the general public is probably not aware of is the cost of our retirement system. So you can notice over the years since 13-14 all the way up to 25-26, the district's contribution to STRS and PERS has steadily increased. So every dollar we spend on a classified employee, 28% of that dollar we have to put towards retirement. So it's kind of a hidden cost.
But then that's more investment in the staff.
Yes.
Staff, yeah. And that's increased always year over year?
So for STRS, it's projected to be
Statutory.
19%, and they're projecting for the next 3 years to be 19%,
Okay.
19.10 for for PERS, they're increasing a little bit every year.
So it would be safe
Right
to
now-
make a statement,
right now it's
they've not
about 20
decreased. You're
They have
okay.
not decreased.
Okay, cool. I'm just trying to be fair here, but also provide facts.
And I'll jump very quickly for to our assumption sheet available in the more detail. I think it's all the way in there.
So this is what's attached to the presentation. So we found earlier that we attached separate attachments and individuals did not open each attachment. So we put all of them into one. So this is like 130 pages, I believe,
158.
because a comment that we got was that, you guys don't have any information posted, but we had it in like 3 different documents. So what we did is put them all in one PDF. Here's our assumptions that we have for each year. So these are major assumptions that go into our budget. Go ahead, Nadia. I'm sure you're going to point something out.
Yes, I was going to go over, so this is the assumption sheets we use. We check each other, like, oh, I captured this assumption. Is this still correct? Yes, we're still doing this. But the STIRS and PERS, this year is 19%, is projected to be the same for the next 3 years. PERS is increasing a little bit. This year is 27%, and then it's 27.6, then 28%. So PERS tends to be a little bit more aggressive. I think we saw it at some point at 30%.
And over half of the major assumptions that we are made actually come from school services. They provide something called a dartboard. So this is not us creating these assumptions internally, like for STIRS and PERS and workers' comp. It's put out by the state.
Is that percent of revenue or
Salaries.
percent of salary?
Yeah. So this one,
So for all of our teachers, we pay 19.1% into STIRS for
so
them.
their yearly salary is
Oh, okay.
$100,000. Like, it's going to cost us 19% of that 100,000.
Okay, got it.
Okay, sorry.
This is another thing that we talk
Wait, I'm
about.
sorry. That's a pretty significant number. I
Yep.
mean, that's great, that's good.
Yeah.
So you're saying on top of what's allocated for salary is another 19% of the entire aggregate
Yes.
that needs to be matched in real time.
Yes.
Wow.
We for the last, I don't know how many years COVID.
3 or 4.
So we receive a lot of one-time funds for COVID. We are fortunate that our district had money in reserve levels, and we were able to spend to buy some of the items we needed during COVID. But then the state and federal started like, oh, we're going to send you this money for technology, or so we have been able to use some of those one-time dollars in a very strategic manner, where some other districts have already spent it and we're waiting for that money. So we still have carryover. We didn't spend, and then we were some districts had already spent it and we're waiting for those monies to refund the district. For us, we were able to afford it out of our reserves. And then for those one-time funding COVID, we can still use for early literacy or some other programs that are helpful for learning. But this does cause like swings, because we don't, at budget adoption, we don't include what their carryover is going to be until the books are closed and we bring it in our carryover.
How much money is that?
Several million.
So I think at some point we had like 10 million.
Yeah.
Okay.
So just looking at the clock, it looks like you guys summarized the key changes between budget adoption and first interim in that kind of highlight slide. So it seems like not any unexpected changes in that you're intentionally conservative on some revenue amounts. And is that fair to say?
Yes. Can you go to the 3-year? I think some questions that come up. So when you look at the multi-year projection, oftentimes like people are looking at total revenues and they're going 113, 118, 121, 120. So they're like, wow. So we should see like steady increase, and then they're looking at expenditures. And typically, if everything is staying the same, you should see like a steady line, right? Just with inflation. But what you're seeing here is we have a textbook adoption here, and we have a textbook adoption here. So this steady line goes like this. And that was highlighted in one of those other slides, but I think when you're not working with the numbers all the time, I think sometimes Nadia and I get questions like, we think you guys are a little off here. But it's not off, it's because we have planned expenditures from the textbook adoption. Or in this out year, our Google lease we're counting as no lease revenue because we're conservative, which is that Slater site. I think we're gonna lease it out for sure because there's lots of interest, but because we don't have a signed lease yet, it's not included in our revenue. So that's why we see the shift. And then of course, in the last year, when we talk about AV growth, this all connects back to that assumption sheet where it shows that we are assuming 4, and then in the year out, it's only 2. So it's very conservative, which is why you're not seeing that steady line because we don't know exactly what this is going to look like. We'd rather plan to have a tightened belt, and as we get closer to loosen it.
So when you're reviewing this in the board meeting.
Yeah.
Are there questions that come up that need to be addressed about 2-3 years down the road? Or is that held just with explanations that you just made?
It depends on the board. So sometimes they'll ask questions like they'll say, well, why is our revenue only 120 million in the 3rd year? And then Nadia will answer. But we try to cover that in the previous slides where we talk about the assumptions.
But the practice would be to really focus on next year and what's critical to make sure it's balanced and accurate for the following year. There's not a lot of scrutiny because, I mean, at face value, that's like, whoa, what are you going to
Yeah.
do? But obviously you will know because it's happened. It's a cycle.
Yeah, I think when we look at the 3rd year out, we're trying to make sure we stay between 17 and 20% reserve level. And then last time we talked about reserve levels for basic aid districts because that's our safe place. So right now we're doing good. I think Santa Clara Unified has a really strong policy. I think it's like the 5th year out, they're at 30%.
But the other piece is like each year you change the budget, so the budget is always updated to reflect a balanced budget. So like for this budget next year, it's going to be around the same kind of percentage at the end because you've made the changes for the year that it's impacted, right? You're not going to keep this budget, like you make the changes along the way.
Yeah.
Yes and no. I think eventually, like if you watch our trajectory, we're showing a $13 million deficit in year 3.
Mhm.
So I think it's currently okay for us to have that because we have a reserve level that's high enough to sustain it. But if AV growth doesn't continue to grow, eventually we would make changes.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, I guess what I was saying is like, for example, like you're projecting 6% for this year, right? But if it only hits 4%, next year the budget will already
Yes.
be changing so that you've reflected that so that it doesn't get to a point where there's going to be a year where you get 1% growth and you were expecting 2%. Like you make the changes based on
Yes.
what actually happened.
You got it. Yes. Sorry for
Of course.
Yeah, sorry.
I know we're way over time.
Okay.
so-
Yeah, I think we should be respectful of everyone's time here, so I think we'll wrap up here. Any last comments on things that we should look for when we're reading this on our own?
I think the assumption sheet is a good place to
Okay.
see because you may see like, assessed value or property tax rate in the 3rd year out is 2%, like we're more conservative, so that gives you a little bit of context, or like, there's like a textbook adoption, so the expenditures are going to
Okay.
be. So I think the assumption sheet is good. We have it as a working document. We try to update it as quickly as we can, or as we know, like, next year we're going to need more instructional aids for TK, so we keep updating that document.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks for this.
Will somebody summarize the action items for our group that we're supposed to do?
Well, I'll share the notes tonight, just top them on everybody's email. I would welcome
Yes,
you all to
we'll-
come in,
we should all look at it.
make everything right, edit anything. There's information here. Something that's not in there, and we can decide if we want to keep it in there. You've brought up a couple of points today that are giving me a really good idea of where there's some need for better communication in this platform. And that isn't always seen until we start to talk about it. And you all have your world, we have ours. But I'm already seeing there's some really good ways of sharing more of this stuff. I don't know why, but
And I welcome everybody to write down your thoughts. I think a lot of times good thoughts are said out loud and then we don't write them down and then it's not real. So.
So then to clarify, the next steps will be in the document, because I want to make sure that we address that concern, because I have a similar question. So in the document, we'll
Somebody
put
tell
down
me
a-
what I need to do.
Someone will type out the next steps.
Yeah, so
All right, perfect.
let's try to, as a general practice, let's try to finalize our meeting minutes within the next 48 hours, just 2 days.
But then will the meeting minutes include an explicit section for action?
Next steps,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah,
Like at the end of our OT.
yeah,
Next
yeah.
steps.
I'll-
Okay.
Yes, they should.
And maybe
Yes.
we'll assign it.
Yes.
But it will be community.
Yes.
contribute.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Quick question, I know who we didn't have here today, but, the name Antia Kirschner?
Yeah, I will reach out to her.
Is she a part of this committee?
She's on the committee, but she hasn't made any of the meetings.
Oh, okay. Is she a parent?
She's a parent.
Oh. If she's not gonna do it, can we throw somebody else in there? Remember on the one board meeting a couple of weeks ago, somebody was
Yeah.
complaining that there wasn't any representation from Crittenden, et cetera.
Yeah.
I mean, don't we wanna have that other parent slot filled?
You know, we actually
okay.
expanded it
Oh, okay.
because we had a tie.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's figure out if they wanna participate, and if not, we can just take them off the website.
I'll check with them. Doug, I close this down first. I'd love to get a jump on travel policy. That would be-
Thanks, Patty and Doug.
Thanks,
for
everybody.
taking-
Thank you guys.
Can you figure out your email address to send you that, so you kind of.
Oh, I got it. It's all good.
Oh, you got it, okay.
We're good.
And
Thank you.
what is your email?
It's Acme Transmedia. So